Apple has threatened to take Twitter off of its App Store. This is a tweet from Elon Musk just a few days ago, and you can imagine that doesn't feel very good coming from a guy who's paid over $44 billion for Twitter, and now they're threatening to take this app off of their App Store. My name is Jameson. I'm an app developer. This is what I do for a living. I submit updates and new apps to apps I have on the App Store, and so I wanted to give my take on what's happening and what can Elon really do to stop this from happening. Let me introduce you to the App Store guidelines. These are Apple's rules for if you can stay on their App Store or not. And as you can see, they're mostly concerned with safety, performance, business, design, and legal. However, if you've read through these, which I've read the entire thing multiple times, you'll realize that a lot of these things are up to interpretation. For instance, we have the safety guideline number 1, and then there's subpoints. 1.1 objectionable content, 1.1.1 defamatory, discriminatory, or mean-spirited content, etc., etc. And as you can imagine, these words are very open to interpretation by the people reviewing the app. So Apple has teams and teams of people known as app reviewers, and app developers like myself or the developers over at Twitter would be submitting updates or new apps, whatever it may be. We submit these to the app reviewers take a look, they look through the guidelines and they make sure that the app abides by all the guidelines. If it doesn't, they might send back a rejection message saying, here's why your app is rejected. The problem is that when they do that, they will be very vague because they have tons of apps to go through. There's over 1,000 apps submitted to just the Apple App Store every single day. So these app reviewers will pick one of these reasons and then send it back to you and say, okay, your app violates 1.1.1. Now, go figure out how to fix that. 99% of the time, they do not specify why it violates that guideline. They just send you the number, and then they say, fix it. And if you send them a message saying, well, why can you expand on this? A lot of the time, they'll just copy and paste their original message, and then they'll just send it back to you. That's how unfair and rushed these review processes are. And even for a big shot app like Twitter, Elon is saying that they won't tell them why, and I completely understand that. I've been there many, many times before, where they give you the guideline number and they just say, fix it, and they don't tell you how to fix it. If you think it's just me and Elon, go and ask other developers. They'll have the same problem too, or just ask Fortnite. They got completely removed from the Apple App Store. They're not on there. It used to be, but it got removed because they were not abiding by the App Store guidelines, at least according to the reviewers. Now, it's completely reasonable, in my opinion, that a company like Apple can choose who is on its platform. Apple has their own brand to maintain, and if they feel like apps are on there violating that brand, then they have the right to remove that. Now, where the problem comes in is that if you're an app developer, you really only have two options. You have the App Store and the Google Play Store. In the US, it's roughly a 50-50 split, where 50% of people will have iPhones and 50% of people will have Android phones. In a place like India, it's actually a lot more skewed towards Android, but that's besides the point. There's really only two options for phones, Android and iPhone. Here's a tweet from Elon saying the same thing 23 hours ago. It's a real problem. Apple and Google effectively control access to most of the internet via their app stores. Here's another tweet. Did you know Apple puts a secret 30% tax on everything you buy through their app store? That's mostly true. It's everything over the first million that you make, but the first million is a 15% tax. But still, 15 to 30% tax on the entire App Store internet is a crazy amount. However, there are a lot of ways to get around this. I made a video I'll leave linked below called Apple's Cut. How much is Apple's revenue split with apps on the App Store? And I detail ways in which you can circumvent, for instance, making your app free or charging outside of the App Store, which is sometimes okay. For instance, if you're making a cross-platform app, like on Netflix, you create an account on the website, and then on the mobile phone, you can simply just log into your existing account. In that case, they can charge outside of the App Store, and Apple doesn't take a cut. So there are clever ways to get around this, again, all detailed in that video, a link below. And the reason I know about these methods is because Apple actually published a website which contained all the different ways that apps do not pay them. They've since taken this down, but I documented it fully in that video. And the reason they created this in the first place was because the CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, etc., they were all being grilled in a House Judiciary hearing on antitrust law. I saw a tweet earlier saying that Twitter was probably going to switch so that accounts are created off the platform so that they can avoid that tax. Here's another astonishing tweet by Elon saying that, "I certainly hope it does not come to that, but yes, if there is no other choice, I will make an alternative phone." Now, this is a lot more complicated than people might think. It's not just about the hardware. The hardware is one thing, he makes rockets and cars. Clearly, he could figure out how to make a phone. But a phone is so much more than that. A phone is all about the apps. So you can imagine apps like Twitter itself, where Elon paid $44 billion for this. That is developed natively for the iPhone and natively for an Android phone. Now, how do I know that? Well, because the technology used in it is very specific to the platform. Like, the look and feel is completely different for those two platforms. There are solutions that build web-based apps that can run on both platforms at once, and that's a strategy I use for a lot of the apps that I create. But the problem is that a lot of apps are developed natively, and they would need to be redeveloped for Elon's new phone. So there would be a huge potential cost and timeline for developing these new apps to be published specifically for the Tesla phone, or whatever it may be called. Although one way around this would be to gear the phone more towards web-based apps initially, like you can simply browse the Twitter website as you would on a mobile browser. And so they would essentially just need a really, really great browser on this Tesla phone, and that way they could kind of bootstrap and have options available for people who want to use the Twitter app and who want to use the YouTube app on their new Tesla phone. They would be able to use the websites, which function great on mobile browsers. Problem is, you wouldn't really have things like push notifications and really any sort of native functionality, turning on the flashlight, taking pictures, etc. Those things would all need to be developed, custom apps, all from scratch. So there's plenty of work to do, but a good starting place for Elon would be to go for a more web-based feel on his new Tesla phone if he decides to go that route. That's at least my opinion as an app developer. Anyways, if you want to hear more updates on this topic and more news about app development in general, be sure to subscribe to the channel down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.